The little girl's voice trembled as she tugged at the sleeve of the man's sharp, perfectly pressed black suit, her tiny fingers barely able to grip the expensive fabric. Around them, the station roared with life, rolling suitcases, echoing announcements, hurried footsteps slapping against the polished floor, but her soft, broken words sliced through it all like a blade. "Sir, my mommy's crying in the bathroom." She looked up at him with wide, glassy eyes that reflected the ceiling lights, as if she was searching for safety in his face. Her chest rose and fell too fast, each breath shaky while her other arm clung desperately to a worn brown teddy bear, as if it were the only thing keeping her standing. For a split second, he froze. He was used to boardrooms, power, ruthless negotiations, not children's tears and trembling voices. He glanced around, instinctively scanning for danger, his jaw tightening slightly. Something cold stirred in his chest, a warning, a pull he couldn't explain. When he looked back down at her, he noticed the faint tear tracks dried on her softly flushed cheeks, the way her small shoulders trembled beneath her faded pink dress. The world blurred behind her. In that moment, she was all he saw. And somewhere, past the noise and the crowds, he felt it, the weight of her fear, settling onto him like a silent responsibility he could not ignore. He followed the direction of her trembling finger, the faint pull of her hand, guiding him through the moving crowd. Each step toward the restrooms felt heavier than the last, the air tightening around his chest as if he were walking into the unknown. The bright lights dulled, the voices around him blurred into a low, distant hum. When they reached the entrance, a chill crept up his spine. The harsh white lighting inside revealed empty sinks, dripping faucets, a broken paper towel crumpled on the floor. And then he heard it, a stifled sob, sharp and desperate, leaking from behind a closed stall door like a cry smothered by fear. "Ma'am?" His voice dropped, losing its usual command, softening instead, as if he were afraid even a whisper might shatter her. The space swallowed the sound. For a second there was only silence, and then a shaky inhale, followed by another broken gasp. "I can't leave," she breathed from behind the door, her words trembling, soaked in panic. "They're waiting outside." The girl's grip tightened around her teddy bear, her head lowering as if she already knew the danger. And in that cramped, echoing room, a heavy realization settled over him. Whoever they were, time was running out. Footsteps brushed past the entrance to the restroom, then slowed. Voices followed, low, impatient, edged with irritation, just loud enough to seep through the thin air. The kind of voices that searched, that didn't intend to walk away empty-handed. His entire body tensed, instincts sharpening, the way they used to before ruthless meetings and hostile takeovers. Only this wasn't business. This was real. This was fragile. Slowly, deliberately, he rose to his full height, placing himself between the stall and the doorway, a human barrier carved from quiet determination. Behind him, the woman's breathing splintered into silent, terrified hiccups. He could feel her panic without even seeing her face. It vibrated through the metal divider, through the air, through his own blood. The little girl pressed closer, her forehead resting lightly against his leg, small hands twisted into his coat as though he were the only solid thing in a collapsing world. He slipped the coat from his shoulders and wrapped it around her without thinking, enveloping her in a dark, protective warmth that smelled faintly of cologne and winter air. "Stay right here," he whispered, his voice low but unbreakable. "Don't move. No matter what." His reflection stared back at him from the mirror above the sinks. The same tailored suit, the same sharp features, but the eyes were different now, colder, focused, dangerous. The approaching steps grew louder, stopping just outside the frame of the doorway. In that suspended second before whoever it was appeared, a single thought cut through his mind with perfect clarity. "Nothing is coming past me." The door creaked open, slow and deliberate, and the noise scraped through the restroom like a warning. Heavy shoes stepped onto the tile, one pair, then another. They didn't rush. They didn't need to. They were used to people freezing, to fear doing half their work for them. He felt the shift in the air instantly, pressure, threat, intent. He didn't turn his head at first. He simply straightened his spine, broad shoulders squaring as if he were stepping into an invisible line of fire. "Move," one of the men said, rough and certain, as though the command alone should bend the world for him. He turned then, slowly, calmly. His expression held no anger, no panic, just a composed, chilling certainty, the kind that made powerful men rethink everything in a heartbeat. He took a quiet step forward, placing more distance between the door and the stall behind him, making sure his body completely blocked their view. Inside, the woman had gone silent. No more sobs, only the barely there sound of her breath. The girl's small fingers dug deeper into the fabric of his trousers. He could feel her tiny tremors against him, like a frightened bird clinging to the last branch in a storm. "You're done here," he said, voice low, level, final. No shouting, no threats, just pure authority. The kind forged in boardrooms and battles no one ever saw. His eyes locked onto theirs, unblinking, cold as steel. "Whatever you think you're about to do, you're not doing it." The men hesitated. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across their faces. Something in the way he stood, the way he didn't need to raise his voice, made them realize they weren't facing an ordinary stranger in a restroom. The balance of power shifted in that quiet, breathless second, and everyone felt it. For a long, breath-held moment, no one moved. The restroom seemed to shrink around them, every reflected angle of tile and mirror capturing the standoff, like a silent witness. One of the men swallowed hard, the other's jaw flexed, a muscle jumping in frustration. But the confidence that had carried them in began to drain, replaced by the uncomfortable realization that they had stepped in front of something far more dangerous than fear. Not rage, power. Quiet, calculating, unstoppable power. "Who do you think you are?" one of them muttered, trying to scrape authority back into his voice. A faint, almost unreadable curve touched the corner of his mouth. He didn't answer the question directly. He didn't need to. "I'm the last person you want between you and an accusation," he said instead, just loud enough to echo off the mirrors. The weight of that sentence dropped into the room, like a stone into deep water. He watched the understanding bloom in their eyes, recognition dawning, name, influence, consequences all crashing in at once. Behind the stall, the woman finally released. The breath she'd been holding for what felt like a lifetime. It slid out of her in a quiet, shaking exhale, the sound of someone stepping back from the edge. The little girl lifted her head from his leg, just slightly, as if testing whether the world was safe again. Her wide eyes searched his face, hope mixing with disbelief. The men stepped back. One slow step, then another. The door swung shut behind them, and the heavy silence they left behind was suddenly filled with something softer. Safety, trembling but real. He didn't move right away. Only after he was certain the danger had passed did he glance down at the child and give her the smallest nod. "It's okay now," he murmured. The stall door creaked open, and the woman emerged, pale, shaken, eyes red but standing. She looked at him like someone staring at a miracle they never expected to see. And in that quiet, fragile moment, as the fear finally loosened its grip, the world seemed to breathe again. The woman's hands trembled as she reached for the restroom door, her fingers hovering over the cold metal handle, as if even that simple touch might betray her to the world outside. For a heartbeat she hesitated, chest rising and falling in shallow, uneven breaths, the echo of fear still clinging to her ribs. Then she pushed. The door swung open with a soft, hollow sound, spilling them back into the harsh brightness of the station. Noise rushed in, voices, announcements, rolling luggage, but it felt muted, like listening through water. She stepped out slowly, shoulders curved inward, eyes lowered, as though the ground itself might turn against her if she looked up. "I didn't know who else to trust," she whispered, the words barely made of sound, worn thin by panic and exhaustion. The little girl pressed close to her side, tiny fingers curled into the fabric of her mother's sleeve. Yet her face had changed. The terror had softened into something cautious and curious. She glanced up at the man again, studying the stillness in his posture, the quiet strength in the way he stood, just close enough to shield them from the passing crowd. Her teddy bear hung loosely in one hand now, forgotten. Around them, people hurried past without a second glance, unaware that just moments before, a life had almost shattered. He gave a single nod, subtle but steady, a silent promise that the moment had passed. And as their eyes met for the briefest second, something wordless and heavy drifted between them. Gratitude, disbelief, and the fragile beginning of trust. Blooming in the aftermath of fear, as they stepped farther into the flood of people, he moved with them, not ahead like a guard, not behind like a shadow, but beside them, close enough that the woman could feel his presence without needing to see him. Every instinct in him stayed sharp, scanning faces, measuring movements, reading the crowd for any sign of those men returning. The station lights glinted off passing windows and polished floors, breaking into fractured reflections of their figures as they walked. The woman's breathing slowly began to steady, each step pulling her a little, further away from the fear that had locked her in that stall. Yet the memory still clung to her skin like cold rain, and she hugged herself as if to keep from shattering all over again. Finally, she lifted her gaze and looked at him, truly looked this time. The strength in his composure unsettled her almost as much as it comforted her. Gratitude filled her chest so sharply it hurt. "What's your name?" she asked, her voice soft, cracked, but sincere. He hesitated just a fraction, as if names carried weight he wasn't used to giving away so easily. Then a faint, rare half-smile touched his lips. "Today?" he murmured, eyes still scanning the world around them. "Today, I'm just the man who was standing in the right place. At the right time." The little girl slipped her small hand into his, surprising them both. Her fingers were warm now, not trembling. "Thank you for saving my mommy," she said simply. And in that moment, something distant and guarded inside him shifted. Just slightly, a quiet crack in the armor. The noise of the station continued, people passed, lives moved on. But for the three of them, suspended in that fragile pocket of time, the world felt different, safer, softer, and somehow connected.